Hi, Tiffany.
Thanks for having me.
I'm so happy to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I'll just welcome everybody. This is the Infinite Focus Schools Summer Teacher Talk Series. I'm here with Tiffany. My name is Ashley Williams, and I am the founder and CEO of Infinite Focus Schools, which is a mindfulness and socio-emotional app for young people. So, Tiffany, tell us a little bit about yourself. Why teaching? What grades do you teach? You
Yeah.
can start it, yeah.
So I am located in Minnesota, born and raised here. I'm going into my 6th year
Aw.
primary. So first, second grade, I taught in kindergarten. So I love the littles. And I teach for Minneapolis public schools. So I'm in the public school system. Just love it. I became a teacher kind of, it's cliche. You know, I love kids. It's just become a teacher. I feel like we're always drawn to me. They like me, I like them. It was this mutual, hey, like, let's hang out. But I also just enjoy the art of teaching. I really like the challenge of getting all kids to understand certain concepts in which are personal and sticky to them. I struggled in certain content areas of my schooling growing up, and so it was really important to me to become a teacher and to teach in ways that all kids were able to grasp and understand. So, yeah, that's why I became a teacher.
So if you had to put the art of teaching is like fill in the blank in one sentence, what is the art of teaching for you?
It's so expansive. That's hard. I think the art of teaching is just being able to connect with kids more than just on an academic level, but connect with kids on a social, emotional level. Kids got to respect and trust you if they're going to do any sort of meaningful work in your classroom. So I think the art of teaching is really understanding the whole child, where they come from, where they're going, their background, their race, ethnicity, culture, and all the things that play into what they bring to the classroom and meeting them there. Not just being culturally responsive, but culturally relevant in your instruction, so that you can provide a meaningful classroom for them outside of just being a learner, but just being a child in your classroom. So.
Yeah, that's a beautiful answer. And like, how would one go about teaching the whole child? So we understand pedagogy, we go to school, we learn how to do that, but we're not necessarily taught this whole child approach when we enter into the classroom.
Yeah.
How did you go about that?
You know, it's definitely something that you need to be independently pursuing. It's not, like you said, it wasn't something that we were overtly taught in education programs. It's really sad because there's so much there that could be discussed with people that are going into the classroom, but I've just found self-education. My school has been great about being intentional about doing weekly staff PDs where we talk about, you know, for example, this past year we talked about how language factors into how our student population learns, and dive into that. And you know, outside reading, outside of my like college classes, reading myself, professional developments, having conversations with coworkers and people that maybe know more than I do, vulnerable and open to that growth journey, because it can be really hard and kind of embarrassing, but you know what you don't know, and so you got to pursue those avenues for yourself, which I think is really important.
Yeah, so like the teacher staying as the learner so that the teacher can teach better.
Totally.
Yeah. What are some of the challenges that you faced, you know, when you first started teaching 6 years ago and even today going into next school year?
Yeah. I think the most challenging thing for me, honestly, has been just understanding my positionality. I teach mostly Black children, and as a white woman, I'm really intentional with coming correct, basically.
Yeah.
Having done my homework and approaching my children and my the utmost respect and humility. And like I said, you know, coming educated, my life is not the same as theirs. And my experience has been different than theirs, especially, you know, in the wake of all this George Floyd stuff that happened, you know, just a couple miles from me. Sitting in that and get a better grasp on how I can be a present ally for my students and my families. Not just by being kind and being loving, but really intentionally educating myself on how I can come correct to my families. And there's just been a lot of growing pains with that, and a lot of times where I've been uncomfortable or embarrassed or said things like, oh, that, you know, I've done that or said that. Just having grace with myself that it is a part of the journey here. And that education, it's just this continual journey, realizing I've never arrived, that there's all ways I can be growing, and my students and my coworkers have really helped aid in that growth. So I'm so grateful. But it's really hard and challenging, but like in the best possible way.
Yeah. And how do you cultivate like that space for socio-emotional growth for your students? I heard you mention the George Floyd incident and the effect that that has on your students of color in particular. So how do you as a teacher cultivate that space for them to process and not necessarily just this incident, but just as young people, young human beings, to process and to actually flourish in an emotional health capacity?
You know, I think that that's a space that you need to intentionally create in your classroom. And I'm a very firm believer that social emotional learning and classroom management and those components are the bedrock of effective academics. Like, you can't touch meaningful learning if SEL and classroom management is not solidly in place. So I definitely am really intentional about building a class community of kids who can be open, vulnerable, honest, and just create space for that. So every day I tell the kids, we're going to be learning about Black history year round. I don't think it's fair that it's limited to a month a year. And we're going to talk about history, and we're going to talk about current events. And if there's ever something going on that we just need to sit as a class and process through, let's do it. Because that's how real authentic learning happens, are in those moments, and giving the kids voice and giving the kids space to air those things out and hear from each other and hear from me. So creating a safe environment where kids feel heard and feel seen, and obviously that's done through the literature and to kids. It's done through, you know, the teacher providing that space and that platform for kids to be able to speak. So at the end of each day, during our snack time, down and we'd talk about current events, or I'd read them a book about Black history, or we'd watch videos. Really just give them that space and that voice that they need and deserve to be able to process through some of those things. Yeah, it's really tough stuff, but it's space to discuss tough stuff in class, even young. So obviously in a developmentally appropriate and respectful way, but I do think it's really important to have room for that in your classroom outside of academics.
Yeah, and I think it also connects to what you were saying earlier about forming the relationship first with your students to create that space to have those really challenging conversations, to have an opportunity for everybody's voice to be heard, even in those moments where it feels really, really challenging. You seem to do a really good job with creating a platform for your students to thrive in academically as well as emotionally. So how are you taking care of yourself? How does Tiffany practice self-care?
Well, you know, I feel like self-care can be kind of a cliche phrase, because some people, you know, they go to the salon or they go get their makeup and they're like, I'm practicing self-care. But self-care on a deeper level, it's like a continual process of nourishing your mind, body, and spirit, you know, with things that fill your cup and bring you joy, so that you're able to give back at your fullest capacity to your students and to the world around you. So to me, self-care is the day-to-day habits that build me up as a person and allow me to live life at my fullest capacity possible. So it's lot of different forms, practicing the way that I talk to myself. I'm like self-critical. I get really hard on myself, especially in teaching. I take my job very seriously. So just practicing being kind to myself and affirming the work that I'm doing. I practice yoga every morning, and that is just like the best gift to my physical body and taking care of myself in that way. I read. I have like 2 or 3 books going at a time, one for self-help and one for education. And that's a gift to my mind. And so really intentional with who I'm surrounding myself with, what I'm surrounding myself with, and just making sure all parts of myself are being fed and replenished as needed. And yeah, that comes with being in touch with your emotions, right? Like, what does my body need right now? What does my mind need right now? And then feeding it those things. So that's what I do to self.
Would it be fair to say that your definition of self-care is intentional attention to your mind, your body, and your emotional experience, and then like honoring whatever that attention requires?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah. So what about mindfulness? Are you practicing that at all in your self-care practice?
Yeah, I do guided meditation every now and again. It's not a part of my daily practice. I'm really just the yoga for the time being, but I do guided meditations if I feel my brain is just going like really fast and I just need to slow it down and bring attention to other parts of me. But I'm not as well versed in that area as I should.
Yeah, I mean, and that's totally fine. When you have done guided meditations, what has been your experience?
It's just really clearing, and I think the breath is such an important thing, and I'm always operating like 10 out of 10. I'm a really intense type A teacher type, so we're all, like on the go, and my mind is always has like just a million bajillion things going on. And meditation is just a way to slow and bring your focus back to your breath, which is so funny because it's something my kids and I practice mindfulness in the classroom, which I'm sure we'll talk about at some point. And I talk to them about the importance of breathing and being intentional of their, with their breath and what's your breath trying to tell you when you're feeling certain ways. And then I have such a hard time practicing it myself regularly. But the times I have, it's a really great reset. So.
I mean, and it's also like really rare for it to be like a practice that's challenging to consistently do. The practice of it is actually the consistency. I was having same conversation with Willis, who's also a teacher, and she mentioned that she is getting good at being consistent. I'm like, oh, I can relate to that, just like the practice of consistency. So tell me, how do you and your students, how do you guys practice mindfulness in your classroom?
Yeah, well, first of all, I just think the practice of mindfulness, especially is just severely underrated in the classroom. And so I love that you bring attention to it because I think it's super important to teach children mindfulness, because that's in turn teaching them to have capacity to handle emotions that are pertinent to their success in the classroom. So I have like a breathing ball, and during our more difficult transitions coming from a really high energy space back into class and just recentering, I do the breathing ball, and I have a chime that sounds off the beginning of mindfulness, and then I chime again at the end of our mindfulness practice. Sometimes I'll have a kid come up and do the breathing ball, and I have the kids put a hand on their heart and a hand on their stomach, because I say, these are the 2 places that we can really feel the energy in our body. And I tell them to just really be in tune with, how fast or how slow their heart is beating, or their stomach is going in and out, because that means they're breathing really fast. Or they can mimic the ball going in and out, whatever is more relaxing to them. And I allow them to close their eyes if they want to. And we just do that during some of those really like tension-filled transitions, or, they've had and now they're kind of dysregulated because they were with, a different adult with different expectations. There was a lot going on in that space, and it's just a way to bring things back center, and then we can engage in our learning time together again. And so I do think it's a really important thing to do during the school day when you feel the energy shifting or changing or getting higher, not in a good way. It's a good centering exercise, and yeah, something that kids can take with them into life, right? I tell them all the time, like, you can do mindfulness wherever you are. Whenever you feel yourself getting upset, you will always have your breath. Like, you can always practice this. And I tell them, that's what's important for me, for you guys to take what we're learning in here and bring it out into the world. And you can teach it to people around you. It's such a useful skill, not just for class, but for life. And so, yeah, I love teaching it to them. It's a sweet time of the day for us.
Thank you. So we're going to shift gears a little bit. Tell me what your plans are for the summer.
Well, obviously with COVID, things have gotten a little crazy. So I was originally summer school, which I love, and it got canceled because nobody wanted to do school online. So I've just been I've been piecemealing some stuff together. I'm still working with kids, but I'm like needing and tutoring and just doing some odd jobs and stuff, which has been fun in its own right, but I wish I could teach summer school. I'm also just reading and mentally preparing for whatever the fall may bring, just really trying to be flexible on what that may look like and how I may be stretched in that area. Finding, resources and things that can make going into the fall more meaningful if we do end up being online again. But yeah, really just taking the summer to work some odd jobs, make some money, if I'm being honest, and learning stuff. So,
if you could give a new teacher, one piece of advice, what would you share with them?
I remember my quote, my early years teaching that I just held to was go slow to go fast. And I feel like that rings so much more true for today's teachers because now we have social media, which is both a blessing and a curse. I talk about this a lot. It's such a double-edged sword because you get so many wonderful ideas, yet it's this perfect point of comparison if you're a new teacher, which is just so not fair. And so I really stress to myself, in order to go fast one day and do all the things I want to eventually do, I need to be slow right now and just build. So don't expect perfection. Teaching is a process and a journey, and the sooner that teachers realize that, the better. There is no, I have arrived as a teacher. I think that's a pretty detrimental mindset, to be honest. So constantly having a growth mindset like we preach to our students, I think is really important. And just setting manageable and attainable goals. And this is something I do every year. I did as a first-year teacher, and I do to this day. I just set one goal each year. That's my goal for the whole year. And it's cool to see how those take different forms every year. Obviously, my early years teaching, it was all around management. Because like I said earlier, in my opinion, you can't have effective instruction if you don't have classroom management. So it was all about, okay, how do I effectively manage the students in a way that is respectful to everyone, all that stuff. And now my later years of teaching, it's turned into more, okay, how can I increase academic rigor, differentiation, or all those things. So setting sustainable, manageable goals. So like I said, one a year, and at the end of the year, I keep it in a note in my phone, and I always reference back and reflect back to how that goal went. There's a weed whacker outside my building. I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's totally okay. We're gonna wrap it up anyway. Thank you so much for your time. This is awesome. You're awesome. You're doing awesome things with awesome kids. So guys, this is the Infinite Focus School Summer Teacher Talk Series. I'm Ashley Williams, the founder and CEO of Infinite Focus Schools, which is a mindfulness and socio-emotional learning app for young people. It will go great in your classrooms, whether you're online or you're indoors. And I'm here with Tiffany, an amazing elementary grades teacher. Tiffany, tell people where they can find you and learn more about your teaching.
Is this my shameless plug for my teacher? I have a teacher Instagram. If you don't follow me there already, go check it out. You can find me at teacher.tiffany. Yeah, hope you guys give a follow for some teacher, no frills teacher content, real conversations about humanitarian causes, racial justice, all that stuff. That's what you'll find over at my page. So give it a look.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tiffany. Thank you, everybody.
See you later.
Bye.